Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Gallacher here with Caleb Turrentine for Inside the Lines Live. Welcome to another week with us. We got some exciting games going on this week. Caleb, it seems like one season ends, another one is just beginning kind of with the playoff. It's kind of a whole life of its own.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. I know even though you only get one team, it's just a different feeling, man. And you're I know you covered games for us last year, but it's different this week, man. It is just I love it. And I think what's also so interesting about it is I know you'll be at Dadeville and I'm gonna be at Wetumpka, but we're both going to be pretty interested about what's going on with our other teams, trying to keep up on Twitter. We wish we could be at all of them, and I guess it's a good thing that we can't be because that means we had a good bit of teams in the playoffs. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, like games like Hopeville, after Hopeville getting shut out last week by a 3A Reeltown team, I'm kind of interested to see if they can bounce back or not, or if they're going to be sent home early from the playoffs after securing that home field advantage in the first week. But let's just go ahead and jump into mine real quick, and then we'll talk about all your games. Since we'll just be quick with mine. Dadeville at TR Miller in Bruton, Alabama. Should be a fun game. This is kind of it's a TR Miller team that's 8-2. Their only two losses came from a 4A team and a 5A team. So as far as 3A, they went 6-0, dominated all the teams they played, but kind of going on a different path the last 3-4 weeks of the season than Reeltown, letting up more points on average about 20 points on defense, while in the early part of the season they were shutting out a lot of teams. And then Dadeville has kind of done the opposite. They were giving up points in the early part of the season, 1-2 to start the year, and then kind of have just gone on a roll and finished the season 6-3. And a Dadeville team that's defense has really just been carrying them, playing real complementary ball to their offense.
Yeah, I think obviously you have to point out a part of that is competition level. But when you're going into the playoffs, you don't really care about what competition you've been playing because you have momentum no matter who you've been playing. Sure, the schedule fell the way it did for Dadeville, but that doesn't mean that they didn't take care of business the way a good football team should. And yeah, those big plays by the defense and being able to stop offense, you got to go into a game as an underdog. You got to go in with some confidence, and that's obviously going to help them.
Yeah, this was kind of a timid coach, Roger McDonald, throughout the first half of the season, or the majority of the season, really. He was just kind of, kept the same, just we're going to keep working hard, we're going to keep working hard, giving me like the same, just coach speak. And then after that Reeltown game, it's kind of been he's been really excited. He's been real chatty
Turn it
with
up
me.
a notch.
Yeah, it's not that he wasn't chatty with me before. We've had a good relationship all season in his first year here, but now it's just he's really excited. He sees that competing with a team that was in the state championship last year and beating them and seeing where his program is, it made him really excited, and it just makes me and him both probably wish that they could have played that game against Trinity just to see how they fared against really tough 3A competition like that.
Yeah, match up a little bit better. And that's another thing when you talk about wanting to see where you're matched up with these bigger, better programs this year. I think that is the biggest thing this week. I mean, is Dadeville at a spot where, I mean, obviously they're happy to be here and this is a big deal, win or lose, to get back to the postseason and have the season that they had. But is the mindset happy to be there, or do you feel like they can actually compete with a really, really good TR Miller team?
I think this team definitely can compete. The way they dominate the time of possession most games, and they've been letting up 6 points a game through the last month of the season. So just playing really strong defense, and then special teams. I mean, talk about all phases of the game. Special teams just getting it done for Dadeville as well. And, they're able to do it in all kinds of different ways with a lot of different players. It seems like every week another guy is showing up and making a name for himself and just adding to that depth of that team. And, this wasn't supposed to be their year. This is first year Roger McDonald came, towards the end of the summer and didn't get to meet his players, but they bought in, and, these guys are fighting hard for him. And, this is a very young football team. This is mostly sophomores and juniors on this football team. They're only going to be losing a couple guys. So they're going to be even better next year. And I think that everybody's got to watch out for them because they're a sneaky good team, I think.
Yeah, and games with time of possession being one of your crucial parts of winning games, and that you're controlling the game, and that's how Dadeville's done it so far. When you're looking at this game and trying to figure out ways Dadeville can win, where does that score have to be? I mean, do they have to play in the 10-7, the 16-13? If this gets above 20, do they still have a chance to win?
They have the big playability. Lane Smith has found Phil Dowdle, who was my player of the week last week. Phil was able to get open on a lot of plays. He, especially deep, he just seems to make the DBs just lose him. But that's just how often do they want to go to that well, and how well are they running the football with Christian Nelson and Javante Holly, and they seem to get it done all season. So I don't see why they wouldn't be able to now. I do think it's going to be a close ball game, like you said, kind of a 13-16 maybe. But they also have, my kicker of the year coming up when we start doing our awards here, Gunnar Fortenberry. He's been automatic all year and just been a great kicker. And I expect him that if they need him to get it done in a clutch situation, he's done it a couple times this year. I think he's able to do that.
Yeah, it's 3A ball. Having a kicker is certainly nice. Even I don't know if TR Miller has one, but there's got to be one seeds that you come across in 2A, 3A level that don't have those kickers. So that's definitely an advantage to have as an underdog.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, like 4A and under, a lot of those teams just go for 2. They don't even try to kick the football. They just say, we're going to go for 2. That's why you see a lot of those. Yeah, you either see 6 or 8 on the scoreboard, kind of weird scores like 24 and stuff, but they never kicked a field goal. Yeah. So it's kind of.
So 3 level is when you see an offensive lineman do kickoffs. That's when it really gets fun.
Right, exactly. But that's what makes Dadeville so dangerous and just makes them, they're a complete football team. They've been the most complete football team I think that I've covered all season, as far as my 5 teams that I cover. And they're just a strong team all the way around. Just like I said, the biggest thing is playing complementary, consistent football, and that's what they've done.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go over to where I'm going to be, which isn't in Elmore County, but the Elmore County teams. I mentioned it on yesterday's video. Wetumpka, Opelika. This, as soon as we saw that this was a possibility of a first-round matchup a couple of weeks ago, before everything was decided, I think no one wanted Wetumpka. No one in Wetumpka wanted Wetumpka to be the 4 seed. I doubt anyone in Opelika wanted Wetumpka to be the 4 seed. But me, I'm not happy Wetumpka got the 4 seed, but I'm kind of happy I get to see Wetumpka, Opelika in the first round. That is not your average first-round matchup. This is still probably one of the better 4 seeds in Class 6A in Wetumpka. They're 4-2 in region play, so 4-2 usually gets you a home game in most regions, not the 4 seed. But right. Opelika is obviously still really good. They're unbeaten against 6A teams this year. Their 2 losses are to Central Phoenix City and Auburn, 2 really, really good 7A teams this year. So Opelika has turned it up a notch from where they were at last year, although they won the region last year while with Wetumpka and Stanhope. But some reason, even Wetumpka on a down year last year, Opelika won the region last year. That was still a 1-point game last year, and Opelika was the better team. This year, Opelika is the better team. But I can only imagine that Wetumpka is going to go out and compete with them because this game is always close.
Yeah, Wetumpka kind of, I've seen them a couple times this year, and just like, what kind of team is it? Because when you've seen them, they have guys in and out with COVID protocol throughout the year. So, how dangerous are they, and what do you think they need to do to get a win against a really good Opelika team this year?
Well, I'll start on the offensive side of the ball, and we've seen it from them all year. They actually scored on one against Opelika last year, but it's the trick plays. Everyone knows they have them, and they're not even really trick plays anymore because Wetumpka uses them and just schemes for them well. And, it's not like it's a random receiver throwing things. This is a Brandon Bowman, who usually gets the passes on these, is a guy who was competing for the quarterback job over the summer. So, they like throwing the ball with him, and they always seem to pull it out at the right time because everyone's going to be looking for it. They see it so many times on film. But then Coach Ferry and the offensive staff, they pull it out at the right moment every single time, it seems like. So I'm thinking we might see one, maybe a couple of those plays against Opelika. And honestly, even if you don't, they just have to find some consistency. And what we saw against Stanhope Elmore, this Opelika defense is probably just as good, right around the Stanhope Elmore level. And Wetumpka struggled against Stanhope. So, they only scored 13 points. They didn't get their offense going, but a lot of that was due to field position. So that's another thing for the offense. They cannot lose the field position battle, especially as badly as they did against Stanhope Elmore.
Is that all you have for that game? Are you ready to move on?
Oh, no, let's keep going. I mean, Opelika, when you're talking the other side of the ball, Opelika's offense is going to be by a very familiar player that Wetumpka fans know very well. It's Eric Watts, running back. He ran for 230 yards against Wetumpka last season. So they certainly know him. He was the leader, the catalyst of the Opelika's final drive in the last 3 minutes of the game. And he's back. He's better. He's more knowledgeable of the offense, and he's more experienced. He's a really, really good running back, and Wetumpka certainly has to look out for they're not going to be able to cut him down completely. He's probably going to get his 100 yards, but they can't give up the big chunk plays to him. They have to limit him to 3-4 yard carries.
Right.
So then we'll stay in Wetumpka's region, and we'll Stanhope, Wetumpka and Opelika's region, as Stanhope Elmore is traveling to Eufaula. Second time this year we've talked about this Stanhope Eufaula game. The first time around, the Mustangs jumped out to a 6-0 lead on a 50-yard fumble recovery within the first minute of the game, and then they lost by 3 touchdowns. So they're hoping this one goes a little bit more like that first minute and a little less, like the rest of the game. Eufaula is still a really good team. I think they moved into the top 10 this week. They're number 10 in Class 6A. So they know what they're doing. They're a little bit of a surprise this year. Obviously, they have wins over Central Phoenix City. They competed with Opelika, but they have been beaten. They were beat by Lee in a game that a lot of people think that Eufaula, should have been able to win. And so, obviously they're not perfect, and they've lost games that they shouldn't. And Stanhope Elmore is thinking that, they could be that team. But at the same time, Stanhope Elmore is sitting here thinking, like, we are better. This is a game we should win. So it's a really interesting game. I think either of these teams will have a good chance at making a run in the postseason. I know both coaches are probably pretty bummed out that they have to face each other in the first round. Even though Eufaula won that first game by 3 touchdowns, beating a team the second time is always harder than beating the team the first time. Every coach will tell you that. That it's I think it's a little bit of a toss-up.
What's been the message going into this week for Stanhope Elmore is they've had kind of an up and down season, but found their way, we're still able to make their way into the playoffs.
Well, yeah, it's that up and down season that may be the biggest message of all, is that they have not won 2 games in a row all year. They also have not lost 2 games in a row. Losing to Smith Station was not part of the plan in the regular season finale, but if there's a silver lining from that, they have bounced back every single time they lost this season. So if you want to motivate them going into this week, it's losing to Smith Station, showing them what's wrong, and then fixing it like they have every other time this season. If they do that, they fix everything. They fix the 5 turnovers that was a problem against Smith Station. They win the turnover battle. They're going to beat Eufaula. It's just they have to be able to put it in action.
Right. Yeah, that Smith Station team, kind of had a rough year. I think they finished 4-6, but kind of beat up on the 6A teams, but then really struggled against those 7A teams. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, poor Stanhope Elmore, they gave up 180 yards and lost that game because of 5 turnovers. It just reminds me of the Rams game on Sunday. It's fine. I'm over it. Okay? Tua can get out of here. We'll move on. We'll go on to Holtville, who is hosting UMS Wright. Holtville is hosting the first round of the playoffs for the first time since 1986. I know I keep saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it for the rest of the year because it's that impressive. They're hosting a playoff game in general for the first time since 1993, which was also the last time they won a playoff game. Holtville has not won a playoff game in 27 years, and their opponent, UMS Wright, has not lost a playoff game in 3 years, winning 15 straight playoff games. Obviously that results in 3 straight state championships that happen in Class 4A, but this is still a really good team. UMS Wright is 6-4. All of their losses, they have an overtime loss, a 5-point loss, a 2-point loss, and a 1-point loss. So this UMS Wright team might not look like the UMS Wright of the past, but they are still really, really good, and they're really competitive. And every single team, even the elite teams, Class 5A, number 2 is St. Paul's. They only beat them by 1. So, this is a really, really good UMS Wright team, and Holtville is definitely going to have their hands full.
When I talked to Coach Franklin after the game last week, he was, real disappointed with his team. What was his message when you talked to him this week?
Well, I think they're shrugging off last week a little bit better. I mean, obviously that they wish they had played better, and there were some things that they talked about wanting to do a little bit more of. But, at the end of the day, that game really didn't matter. I think there might have been a lack of motivation in it, and they were trying to toy with that passing game. You caught it right off the bat last week's game that, they were obviously throwing the ball a lot more. Drew Pickett, probably didn't even get 10 carries, and they expect him to probably have 25 to 30 against UMS Wright. So it's a little bit of resting, especially for a guy like Pickett who has been the workhorse for them, and he definitely needs to have a big game in order for Holtville to. You don't want to say pull off an upset. They're the 2 seed, but it kind of feels on paper that if Holtville wins this, it is an upset.
Yeah, I don't put a lot of blame on Holtville for last week's loss. That was just a Reeltown team that was going to the last game of the season with a different level of motivation versus a Holtville team that, was kind of wondering what they should be even doing going into that game, if they should even rest guys. And in the second half, they rested starting quarterback Braxton Buck. So just because like they were going for that passing game early, it just wasn't working. But yeah, they from the flashes I did see of the running game, it was a very good running game from Holtville. Defensively, that I think they did well. They just the offense just wasn't able to move the ball. So Reeltown always had the ball in about midfield punt from Holtville punting the ball, usually on their own side of the field. So I don't put too much stock into last week's loss, but I'm still interested to see how they bounce back and how they perform going into this week's game.
Yeah, and I think that's a big key is again, we talk about field position, but that's been one of Holtville's struggles if they've had one this year. It's finishing drives. They stall out turnovers on downs and, on the other side of the field. And when you do that at the, inside the 10, it's frustrating. And then, but, you give them bad field position. But if you do it on like the 30, it might be less frustrating, but it's better field position. And both of those things have happened to Holtville quite a bit this season. They can't do that against UMS Wright. They have to be able to finish drives, especially with the UMS Wright offense. That I mean, it's good, but it's not elite. The UMS Wright offense isn't one of the best that they'll even face this season.
Right.
So they can't give them extra yards. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Coach Franklin plays that in 4th and 5 situations when you are in the 45. Do you try to push things? Do you try to be aggressive, or do you really, really look into that field position battle, which could be a game changer for them?
Is that all you have on that game? Are you ready to move on, or do you still have any final thoughts?
Well, there is one UMS Wright's safety who's a Tennessee commit, 3-star safety. He will not be playing. He opted out for the rest of the season, so that might be helpful. They did not have him for the Helena game, and they ended up losing that by 5. So we'll see if that actually makes a big difference in UMS Wright's defense this year. He's contributed to 13 takeaways over the last 2 seasons, 9 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries. So he's pretty good, and I think Braxton Buck and Jason Franklin are probably going to be happy not to have to throw a consent guy in the secondary.
And that may be why we saw a little bit of the deep passing game. Maybe they were trying to see how they can test the safeties, knowing that they're going to be facing a guy who's probably not had that many snaps this season.
Right. Maybe. I know that's something they've been doing anyway. They want to throw the ball a little bit better, and they'll need that in a long run anyway. But, yeah, definitely this week too. And then finally, our last game will be Edgewood as they travel way out to West Alabama to face off against number 5 Patrician, a Patrician team who has been kind of a surprise to a lot of people in AISA. They've sprung onto the scene. They're an 8-2 football team. When they first started, it was when we didn't know too much about Autauga, and everyone expects Autauga to win all the time, expect to be the number 1 team in AISA, and Patrician beat them in overtime. So that was a really big deal for everyone else looking at us like, is this Patrician team really, really good? And Autauga obviously fell off, but Patrician kept going. They ended up losing their region. They lost to Escambia, but now they have run the table since. They might be, the second hottest team in AISA behind Escambia, who is the favorite to win the state championship. So Edgewood doesn't have the easiest draw, having to go on the road. They only lost 1 region game, and they're the 3 seed. So again, a tough break for one of our teams. But if you're in Patrician's seat, you're probably thinking this is a team that knocked off number 1 Chambers earlier this year, and we're hosting a playoff spot, and we have to play them. That's the 3 seed we get. So obviously neither team is happy about it, but what the saying goes is that if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, and no matter when it is, if you're going to win the state championship, you're going to have to go through them eventually. Why not the first round? So one of the big things to keep an eye on for Edgewood is the quarterback situation. Again, it's still unclear whether or not Alex Johnson will be there. However, because they did not play last week, they obviously would have rather played last week, but with the storm coming through, they had to cancel that game. They did get to rest up and maybe heal up a little bit of bumps and bruises and be more fresh for this week's playoff game. And I certainly think that will come in handy against, again, a really good Patrician team who will play physical, and you got to be fresh against them because they're going to stay fresh. I think they have 8 guys who have scored a rushing touchdown in the last 3 games. 8 different guys have scored a rushing touchdown in 3 games. That's crazy. So they like to keep it fresh. So Edgewood, that's going to be a big thing for Edgewood to keep that stamina up and not get worn out early on, because then Patrician might run away with it.
Yeah, it's always good to spread the wealth. And hey, I mean, this is an Edgewood team that we saw struggle for a couple of years after going on a great run in the early 2010s. And maybe that's back. Maybe that culture is not too far gone, and maybe we start to see that fan base and that school kind of take on that championship mentality that they had for so long.
Yeah, there's still some pieces left from the Bobby Carr era that know what it's about, and that I don't think the culture ever left. I think obviously with the talent level and the experience they had left, that was always going to be the case in those couple of years. But I don't think anyone expected them to rebound the way they did over the past 3 seasons. So um, it's something to be said for again a 3 seed Edgewood to almost be feared as a 3 seed in the first round of the playoffs. So yeah, I'm excited for all of them. I'll be keeping an eye on all of the games, and even the ones that we don't have reporters at, I'll be getting updates from and tweeting out from my own account. So it's going to look like I'm at 3 games on Friday night, but I'll really just at one and keep my eyes everywhere else. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get things going in the playoffs.
Any final thoughts before we sign off? It's getting kind of dark.
You're a little bit dark over there, but I think I'm good. We'll see if Wetumpka Opelika is a 1-point game. That's my final thought.
Yeah, I just hope that me and you are having this conversation again next week and have another Inside
That's
the Lines live. So hopefully I'll see you next week. And reporting for Tallapoosa Publishers, I'm Ryne Gallacher. That's Caleb Turrentine. Be sure to follow us on the games live with the hashtag TPI Preps on Twitter. We'll be giving you all the updates of all of the games that you guys want to see in the high school atmosphere and all that good stuff. So we'll see you guys later. Have a good one.